It's the show that can see Howard the Duck for the modern masterpiece that it truly is. Welcome to another special episode of World of Stu.
You want a podcast? Well, here's a podcast. You want a podcast? It's the World of Stu.
So, welcome to another special edition of World of Stu. Without further ado, let me introduce my guest for tonight. It is none other than Mr. David Turner.
Hello, how you doing, Stu?
I'm not bad, and you good self, mate?
Yeah, it's been a while, has it not?
It has been an absolute eternity from what I can't even remember the last time we spoke.
Well, I think the last time we spoke in person was definitely at your wedding, I believe.
At my wedding, so that's 3 years ago.
Yeah, and you are one child up since then.
I am indeed one child up. Connor Raish is with us.
Are we going to have a debate about how you pronounce Raish?
No, we're not going to have a debate about how you pronounce Raish, because it's Raish, mate.
You used the name Raish. Going to go with Raish instead of Raz.
It's not Raz. Anyone that says Raz is a fool.
Okay, fair enough.
Which would you say, just out of interest?
Well, if it was in the comics, I'd say Raz. Raz Al Ghul. But as you said, it's Raish. I'm having to go with Connor Raish.
Well, I'm basing my Raish on the Batman animated series.
Okay, fair enough.
So, for those of you who don't know, because obviously, Dave, you're not a megastar, you're not in movies, and you don't record songs, as far as I'm aware.
No, that's no.
No. So, would you like to explain how you know me and why we're doing this show?
Well, I used to be your co-host, did I not, on 107 with Falcon. That was back in the days when we worked together in a tiny little video shop, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So, basically, the crux of the show is we are going to talk about all things FM 107 the Falcon. But before that, our history goes back slightly further, does it not?
Yeah, it does, well, not further. It goes back to the little age when we were, 11?
Yeah, and, well, our personal history probably doesn't go back that far, does it? Because I was thinking about this earlier, preparing for this show, and my earliest memory of you is not until the 5th year, or what they call year 11 now.
I am absolutely honoured. We were obviously at school 5 years together before that.
Well, no, because, to be fair, and I think you'll agree with this, we did socialise in different circles.
We did, and I think I probably was aware of you in the first year.
That sounds ominous.
Well, it's obviously, there weren't that many ginger-haired kids in school, were there? It was somewhat of a minority.
Well, there is that, yeah.
And ginger-haired kids that were a bit of a troublemaker as well.
Well, can I just stop you there? And just remind you that, our children will be probably made aware of this at some point.
Yeah.
So let's not go into too much depth about what happened at school.
Well, maybe not troublemaker, but maybe troublemaker is a bit strong. But obviously you were in the cool bunch, so seeing you from afar as not a member of a cooler bunch, obviously, I guess what's that paradigm that I was one of the maybe not the nerdy kids, but you're always aware of the slightly cooler kids, aren't you?
Well, to be honest with you, I was never really a cool kid per se. I had just learned from an early age that the best way to get around was to hang out with the cool kids and make sure that, I wasn't on the end of whatever it was the cool kids were going to be doing.
Obviously, I never learned that lesson, did I?
Besides, even with that, I don't even think that my group came into contact with your group at all until year 5.
Well, let's be honest, it's like we were two separate schools, wasn't it?
It was, and I'll never forget the first time I ever became sort of aware, so to speak, of you. Obviously I knew you because you were in various classes or whatever. The first time I became aware of you was in year 5 when you were into cross-country running.
That's right.
And I took it upon myself, just because that was how I rolled back then, to make a point of trying to outbeat you and your little cross-country group we had to do like 8 laps of the rugby field or something.
It was 1,500 metres.
1,500 metres, and I thought I'd sprint off at the beginning and get such a lead that you would never catch me, and of course that ended up going horribly wrong.
Yeah, it didn't quite work, did it? Because we were all very practised at running a long way.
Yeah.
Like that was, to us, that wasn't even warm up. So we were just like, yeah, hey, this is fun.
And the funny thing is, of course, that seems to have come full circle in your life.
Yeah, it does actually.
Because you've just recently completed the Paris Marathon, was it?
I did. I completed the Paris Marathon back in April.
And what time did you do?
I did it in 4 hours, 8 minutes, and 50 seconds.
See, I have absolutely no idea if that's good or bad.
Well, just to give you an idea, about 40,000 people did it, and I came round about 20,000. Which obviously sounds pretty rubbish, doesn't it? I came 20,000. But no, it was a good time. It was a really good time for the first marathon.
Well, trust me, Dave, if I'd have done it, I'd probably still be running it now.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things you've got to train for a long time, and my feet still hurt, to be honest.
So, obviously, we've touched upon the fact that we knew each other from secondary school, which we haven't named. Of course, it was
Marling Grammar School.
It was. I never quite understood as well the concept of we went to a grammar school because obviously we passed whatever exam. Was it the 11 plus back then?
Yeah, 11 plus we can do it.
Yeah. So we passed that. We went into the top secondary school where we were all boys, so it was a little bit like Lord of the Flies anyway.
Yeah.
But they put us right next door to an all-girls school.
Yeah, which kind of didn't end up so well for me. I kind of left school not being able to girls, didn't I?
Girls never really bothered me at school, to be honest. I was more into other pursuits, shall we say.
Yeah.
So we moved on from school. What did you do when you left Marlin?
Well, I had to pretty much get a job straight away at 18, actually. I started doing some kind of... I can't remember what I did. I went to college and did an A-level or two. So I had to go and work at Blockbuster at the same time.
Which college did you go to?
That would have been Stroud College, as it was back then. The old building, not the brand new spanking one they've got now. I think I did psychology.
At GCSE or A-level?
That was at A-level.
Alright, cool. So obviously you went to Stroud College, which we'll get back to the Blockbuster thing in a minute. That ties in well because I was going to ask you, were you aware of Easy FM when you were at Stroud College?
I heard about it, but I never really got into it or tried to listen to it or anything like that. I heard people were doing it, but I never bothered to listen to it. I sort of thought, just sounds like a little local radio thing, little student radio thing. Not interested.
Because obviously the reason why I mentioned that is because that is where technically the Falcon began.
It is, isn't it? That was... I'm trying to remember his name now.
Oh well, we're gonna get to him in a bit because what I've also done later on, I've got a few names that I'm gonna give you to see if you remember the names, and then it's a kind of where are they now?
Ah, I see.
I've been doing some research, and some of them you may be surprised by.
Some of them maybe not.
Some of them maybe not. I can tell you now that Chris Allen isn't on the list.
Oh, okay, all right, never mind.
Because I've no idea where he is. He's probably in a Borstal somewhere.
Yeah, probably. We can only hope.
Yep, we won't go there because I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the gentleman in question is Mike Ganley.
That was his name.
And the connection to Easy FM and the Falcon was Easy FM, just a quick history for people listening, was an RSL, which is a restricted service license, which ran for 2 weeks at a time. I think it was originally one time per college year. When I joined up in 96, it was run for lots of 2 weeks per year. And it was run by Mike Ganley, who would later go on to open and be the big boss man of FM 107 The Falcon, which is obviously what this show is all about.
It was 107.2, wasn't it?
I just remember having to say FM 107 The Falcon a lot, to be honest. Because I should just point out as well that the genesis of this particular podcast that we're doing now is the fact that I recently managed to procure from a relative mini disc player, because back when we were doing the Falcon, mini discs were obviously all the rage.
They were indeed.
There was no cassettes back then. It was all mini disc because it was going to be the next big thing, but obviously it fell on its arse.
Well, they were the future.
Yeah, a bit like the Betamax of music recording, really.
Betamax, I've still got them somewhere.
You've got Betamax?
Well, I thought I had one. I've got one somewhere. It's pink. I think it's a Pinky and Perky video. It's in my attic somewhere.
I doffed my geek cap today. I think you might have just out-geeked me, mate.
Well, if I can find a Betamax video, then that'd be great.
So anyway, everything was recorded on mini disc, and I've managed to find a mini disc deck that I could listen to these discs through. So that helped me reminisce about the old days and what we used to do, and that has basically led to this podcast. So you were kind of aware of Easy FM. I did 4 Easy FMs, the last of which was run during the period when Mike was actually trying to get the Falcon up and running, which meant that he was not allowed to be linked to Easy FM in any way. So whilst it was in what was the technician's name? There was a guy called Hugh, and he was basically in charge by name, but I was basically in charge on the ground, doing all the groundwork, and I would go in the mornings and be there from breakfast show all the way to the final show at night.
That sounds like a scary idea.
What, me being in charge of a radio station?
It does.
It was awesome, mate. Absolutely awesome. Best time, the best Easy FM they ever had.
I'm sure it was.
Even if I do say so myself. So, that anyway ended in 97, and that led, 97/98, and that led to November 1998, which was the launch of FM 107 The Falcon, which I believe was Stroud's first ever radio station.
It was. Unless anyone can tell us different, that was Stroud's first radio station.
And I remember Mike coming to me actually and saying that he would like me on the show. He wanted to do a youth-based show with alternative music, Monday to Friday, 6 till 8. And the original plan was they were going to have various hosts on various nights. That lasted all the way up to 1 week before the station was to launch, and then that was changed to, Stu, we haven't got anyone else, so you've got to do it 5 nights a week. Yeah. So I started in November 98. Do you remember when you were first brought in?
I really don't remember. Did I come in? I must have come in fairly quickly, like, because you asked me to kind of just come in and just sort of be someone's bounce off, and I quickly turned into someone to make fun of.
Because if you remember the original show, my producer was A.D. Blair.
It was, yes, A.D. Blair.
Yeah, and that didn't go too well because I ended up being suspended for a fortnight.
That was an accident. Anything could have happened. Anyone could have said that.
You actually remember that?
Yeah, a slight slip of the tongue.
Yeah, I meant to say funkin'. Let's just leave it at that, shall we?
And funkin' beats.
Yeah, well, actually, the original idea was that we were going to have a camera filming us in the studio. I was ripping the idea off of Radio 1, and I decided that if we were having a camera, we'd need to have funky music that we could play so people could move around in the studio, but instead of saying funky, I said something else.
Yeah. Well, you did apologise very quick, didn't you?
Yes, but Severn Sound were listening.
Yeah, they were listening to our enemies, weren't they?
Yeah, and they got me kicked off for 2 weeks. But when I came back, AD was gone, and I was basically given free rein. Because I was going to ask you this question, because I don't remember it ever happening. You obviously came in on the show as the co-host. Did we ever run that idea past Mike?
Not as far as I know. Never.
Because I'm thinking about it now, and the idea of me basically being a man off the street, having my own radio show, and just getting my mates in as co-hosts without even clearing it with any of the authorities at the station seems a bit bad.
It does. I mean, you think about it, I could have been anyone. No one ever said to me, by the way, you can't swear. By the way, you can't promote this illegal product. By the way, you can't say this or say that. So I could have said anything. I was very surprised, but really, in retrospect, it's very surprising that, okay, modest man that I am, it's very surprising that anyone would let me on the radio without saying, Anything, really.
I mean, do you remember when we spent an entire half an hour slagging off the MEB?
Yeah, that seems familiar.
Yeah, because there was a power cut, and the first hour and a half of the show we couldn't do because there was no electricity. And then the power came back on with half an hour to go, so we basically spent the entire half an hour slagging off the electricity company and naming them.
Yeah, that could have ended very badly, really.
It's amazing what they let fly. So, obviously, we've got round to the Falcon now. I was doing the show. Originally, I think I'm right in saying that the first version of the show was a Taste of Grant and Rogers.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Taste of Grant and Rogers, because there was Kieran Rogers?
No, Kieran Miles.
Kieran Miles.
And he played a character. Well, he didn't really play a character, did he? He just changed his name to Clint Rogers.
Yeah.
Which actually confused some people.
I still fail to believe how that actually confused people, but some of the listeners, I suppose that's understandable.
Well, it's not even the listeners. Do you remember that one other presenter of one of the speciality shows that came in one evening?
Yeah.
And he said, "What's Kieran doing here? Where's Clint?"
Oh, yes, they did the kind of show afterwards, didn't they? A very kind of, was it the easy listening music show?
I think it was the blues show, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I should just point out to people that are listening, Kieran Miles was the head of news at the Falcon, and because he wanted to differentiate his news self from his presenting self, because me and him were pretty much the same person, it was very similar senses of humour and things like that, he changed his name to Clint Rogers. So he would read the news at 6 o'clock going into my show in his normal voice. He would then start the show as Clint Rogers using his normal voice but just changing his name, and some people actually thought it was somebody completely different.
Yeah, then again, you did have some strange listeners, didn't you? I mean, I certainly remember someone baking you a cake, and you being afraid to eat that cake in case it was poison.
Well, would you eat a cake that some stranger from the top of town brought down?
No, but still.
Especially not with your food tastes.
Yeah, no, I'm not as fussy as I used to be.
I listened to a show the other day where I spent the entire time calling you a food freak.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
I should use this, actually, public forum to make a public apology to you, Dave, and to your wife, Tamsin, who came in later as a host on the show, because I basically just spent the entire time mocking you.
Yeah, you did, but I sort of understood that as part of the show, and, it was all in good humour. But, it was... Let's be honest, once you brought Tamsin on as well, then you just both team up on me and both make fun of me.
And I think we kind of, just referring to you and me, we kind of bounced off each other quite easily.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we haven't spoke for 3 years, but, this is, it's not exactly like we haven't got anything to say.
Nah, exactly.
So why don't you tell us what was your original role on the show?
I don't know what my original role was. Wasn't it just for you to have someone to bounce off, or then you brought me in to do a movie review, didn't you?
Well, you were the review guy, weren't you?
Yeah, I was the movie review guy, and I kind of just mentioned a little bit about some movies and said what had come out what had just come out in the cinema, what had just come out on video, and which was quite fun because we got to go see a few premieres together, didn't we?
Yeah, we got press passes, wasn't it, for Gloucester Cinema.
And we saw some rubbish films.
We did see some rubbish films. Do you remember any?
What was that one? I'm sure there was one where... Did we see... Oh no, Moonlight and Valentino. That was when I saw it happening. That was awful.
Do you know, it's just occurred to me, and I hadn't thought of this. Wasn't one of the films we saw Elmo in Grouchland?
Yeah, it was. That was one of the better ones. Didn't we see that Sandra Bullock thing, 28 Days?
If it was Sandra Bullock, I probably blanked it out of my memory, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure it walked out, because we went and saw it for, I think we lasted about half an hour. And then you decided to walk out and decided that actually we could spend our time better than that.
And we probably ended up going to KFC.
Yeah, absolutely. We went to KFC. We'd had our free coffee at the cinema, so we just thought, you know what, we're not seeing through 2 hours of Sandra Bullock. Let's get trying to go through rehab, no matter what kind of tortured life she's had in this film. Yeah, we can go to KFC instead.
Speaking of Sandra Bullock, just on a complete tangent for a minute while I've got you here, Gravity, what did you think?
I actually really like it. I don't think she's a great actress by any standards, but as a film, it just looks fantastic, and it's realistic sci-fi, which you don't get very often.
I just got bored by it, to be honest.
Apart from George Clooney suddenly coming back to life halfway through the movie. Sorry, spoilers.
He wasn't really coming back to life, though, was he? Wasn't it?
I know it wasn't really, but still, it's a kind of like, oh, so you're clearly having a hallucination. But as a realistic sci-fi, as a sci-fi fan, not enough realistic sci-fi movies get made, and that was one of them.
Speaking of hallucinations and feeling like you've had one, I tried to watch Dune for the first time ever the other day.
How'd you get on?
I got about an hour in, and I just got so confused that I had to turn it off.
It is confusing. It is a bizarre movie. You just got to remember it was made around the same time as Star Wars, when everyone, every movie studio was like, I know, let's just make a huge sci-fi movie and chuck some money at it, and something good will come out of it. And it's like, they did make a sequel, did they? So obviously that didn't work, did it?
And it had Carl McLachlan fighting Patrick Stewart.
Well, that doesn't happen very often, does it?
It doesn't happen very often, which is probably a good thing.
And Carl McLachlan fighting Sting.
Well, I didn't get to that bit, I don't think.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you got to get to that bit because Sting's like, he hasn't got much on. Is it Sting? I think it's Sting. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's Sting. It's just a shame that it wasn't the WCW Sting.
Yeah, that could have made the movie better, to be honest.
So, you were the review guy. We already touched upon the fact that we used to go to the cinema, but the reason why you were the best man to ask for reviews of videos was because of, obviously, the aforementioned Blockbuster Video.
It was.
Now, your children will obviously be aware of Blockbuster Video because you worked there for many years. But my kids, who are... How old are your two now?
Mine are 10 and 11, and 13.
Okay, now, my oldest, Jessica, is 9, and I can guarantee you she will never have heard of Blockbuster Video.
Oh, that's an awful shame.
So, for any of the younger listeners out there, what was Blockbuster Video?
Well, Blockbuster Video, for any younger listeners who are too used to streaming movies, Blockbuster Video was a shop you could go to and you would pick up the movie from the shelf. Which sounds like a really strange idea now, doesn't it?
And I have to admit, because obviously I worked at Blockbusters with you, the first time I walked into Blockbuster Video and I was coming in for my interview, and this goes back to what we touched upon about secondary school and the social groups. I walked in and I saw you, and I recognised you obviously from school, and I thought, I've had my chips, there's no way I'm getting this job, because he's going to remember me from secondary school, and there's no way I'm getting in.
Well, you know what, trust me, I didn't actually think of having a word and saying, you know what, you can't hire him, he's going to be trouble. I didn't think of that at all, because, let's be honest, I mean, you know as well, some of the people we had through there were, what's the word? We were the normal ones, put it that way.
Abstract, that's a good word.
Yeah, abstract.
Yeah, we won't name names, and we won't go into certain instances that happened in that shop.
Absolutely not.
For the good of all that is mankind.
I used to try and convince people that the basement of that shop we worked in was haunted. It was kind of my fun thing to try and tell people that, don't spend too long in that basement. It's stuff has been seen down there. And I think it's just more of a bad memories have been absorbed by that particular area. But people did actually get convinced very easily that it was haunted.
I've seen some stuff in that basement.
I'm sure you have.
But we definitely will not go there.
Definitely not.
Skipping away from Blockbuster Video, because obviously that's gone kaput ski.
Yeah, I was very sad when it went. Do you know what? I get so behind with my movies now. I actually have to try and pay to rent films. Imagine that.
Are you not a Netflix or a Amazon Prime guy?
Well, you know what? I did have Netflix, but Netflix was working fine. I used to watch it on my Xbox 360 on my TV, and then I got an Xbox One. Late, great games. We play the games. That's fine. And now Netflix doesn't work. I called Netflix support. They tried to help. Doesn't work. I called Microsoft support. They Doesn't it help? I'm not paying for a month for them if it doesn't work.
I should just point out that there are other games consoles by Nintendo and Sony that are equally as good as the ones by Microsoft.
Or is equally bad.
Or as equally bad, yeah.
Yeah, you should. Very true, very true. Me having an Xbox One doesn't endorse it in any way. In fact, really, considering how much the kids play it, I can possibly say whether it's as good or as bad as the others because I don't get to play it.
So, on Netflix, did you ever watch Daredevil?
I watched the first episode, and I haven't got round to watching the rest yet, but I really enjoyed it.
I would recommend the rest of the series, it's awesome.
And do you know what I heard yesterday? They've cast someone as Punisher.
Yeah, but that's okay. Have you heard who they're casting as Bullseye?
I haven't.
Jason Statham. Yes.
Never.
So that series has now gone completely down the toilet.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
No. Funny enough, speaking of Jason Statham, I was in one of these shops. I won't give the name because obviously then I'll have to name others. One of these shops where you can trade in your DVDs and your mobile phones and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And in there was a Jason Statham box set.
Cool.
An actual Jason Statham. I don't know what was in it or what films were on it, but I was stunned that even exists.
You know what? One of the last people I worked with at Blockbuster, he had a bit of a Jason Statham fetish, and he had every single Jason Statham film. Didn't matter what it was, he had every single film. And, I have to say, Jason Statham, love him or hate him, he gives bold birds like me a good name, I think.
That's not really a recommendation to watch his films, though, is it? Just because he's bold.
Nah, it's not. But, I'm just saying, he's a good-looking guy, he's muscly, he's bold. I've got to empathise,
So, back to Blockbusters obviously went kaputski. Back to the Falcon. What are some of your memories of your time on the Falcon?
It's difficult to say. I just remember being in that chair and just having a great time. We did 2 hours a night, 2 or 3 times a week, and having an absolutely great time, and constantly being surprised if anyone was actually listening. Because that's the thing. People come to me all the time and say, "How do you do it? How do you just sit there and talk on radio?" I'd say, "Well, I just kind of imagine no one's listening, and and I'm surprised when they are." Actually, it turns out my mum recorded loads of them.
Did she?
Yeah, on tape. I don't know if she's still got them, but she recorded loads of them. And I was just always totally surprised that no one was listening, and I tried to pretend. I know I was a bit nervous towards the start, but I just tried to pretend it was just you and me chatting.
Because let's be honest, the show was just made for our own entertainment.
It was, basically. And I think that's the way to go. Just do it for fun.
There was no structure or anything like that. Going back to the recordings that I've got and listening to some of the old shows, some of the things that I came across were, I don't know if you remember these, was the time that I tried to interview Danny from Embrace, and he was on a train at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And they kept going through tunnels and breaking up, and I had a half-hour interview that was basically just full of air and holes and breaking up of the dialogue and stuff, and out of protest I just played the entire thing unedited.
That must, I kind of remember that just being classic radio.
Yeah.
But not quite as classic as what girl you interviewed. She was supposed to be a new thing. A new Welsh Brittany or something.
I don't know, I interviewed someone from a band called Technique.
It wasn't her, I can't remember her name.
Or Rose, maybe?
You had some great ideas when she came in to, burn the latest Britney Spears CD or something like that, but she just gave terrible one-word answers all the way through the interview. She was just embarrassing.
And do you remember when Mo Molam came in?
Who? No, Mo Molam. I don't remember her.
Was it Mo Molam, or was it the... No, it wasn't Mo Molam, it was the...
Mo Molam, famous Conservative MP. I'm sure I remember her.
What's the other woman's name who was on Strictly Come Dancing?
I know who you mean. I'm trying to remember her name now.
The little lady.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. I'm going to remember her name in a minute. It's going to drive me nuts.
What, like a steering wheel down your trousers?
Yeah.
I actually went there with the cheap joke. I do apologise. Yeah, and she's got her own game show. She's the new host of 15 to 1, is she?
Oh, yeah. I know her. She was, what's her name? She worked on Radio 4.
Well, anyway, she was on the Falcon, but obviously not on our show, because that would have been a complete travesty of broadcasting, I think.
It would, wouldn't it? You can't, she was like 50 or something, wasn't she? She didn't have on our youth radio show.
No. Do you also remember another episode where we had a prize to give away, which was a stress kit?
A stress kit?
And it had one of these toys where you punch it and it makes a noise.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
And I ended up getting you to go up on the roof with a mug and the toy inside the mug.
Yeah, I remember that, because I had work experience girl there as well.
You did, yeah. I think her name was Ellie, maybe?
That sounds about right.
And you were supposed to, live on air, chuck the mug off the roof of the car park, and it was supposed to smash at the bottom. She was at the bottom. But you completely blew it, and you threw it before I came to you, so we missed the whole thing.
I blame Ellie. I told her to tell me when to throw it. She had a phone.
And then you got to the bottom of the car park, and it still wasn't broken, so I instructed you to run over it with a shopping trolley.
Did I get a shopping trolley? I don't remember.
There was a shopping trolley there, because obviously it was near Waitrose or Ocado, or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, it was Waitrose, wasn't it?
Tesco's and Asda and Sainsbury's are all perfectly good supermarkets, by the way, people. So, what do you remember about the people at the Falcon?
Well, I'm just trying to remember. I'm trying to remember now. There was Little Dave, wasn't there?
But we'll get to that in a sec, right? Because what we're going to do now is we're going to play Where Are They Now?
Aha.
Okay? So, I'm going to give you a name, and you tell me, A, if you remember that person, and then we'll discuss where they are now.
Okay.
So we'll start at the top with Mike Ganley, who was obviously the boss, so you know who he is.
He was a boss, wasn't he? I know. I'd imagine he'd gone into still be in teaching or something like that. I don't know. Doing something nice and community based.
Well, I don't know if you remember what his show was called, but it's called The Crooked Road.
Oh yeah. No. I remember that now. Yeah.
And it was all about Irish music and everything. Well, he's still presenting that show.
Really?
Yeah. He's touted it around. He's taken it on various different stations, but he's currently on Swindon 105.5.
Oh wow!
So, and speaking of Swindon 105.5, do you remember Johnny Traffic?
Johnny Traffic, wasn't he? Was he the guy on after us?
No, Johnny Traffic his real name's John Pontin, and he was the guy who did the travel news, and he helped out in the newsroom.
He sounds... I don't know at all, no.
Well, anyway, he now runs a thing called the 4014 project, which promotes events and live music in Wiltshire. And he is also a presenter of a show called The Late Gig on Swindon 105.5.
Cool.
So he stayed in broadcasting. Next name for you, Duncan Cook.
Duncan Cook, I remember Duncan. Because he went to the same school we did, didn't he?
He did, yes.
He was a year above us, and he did some news and weather as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was the head news guy behind Kieran.
Aha.
He took over from Kieran, and Kieran left. Well, he is now a senior broadcast journalist for the Global Radio Group.
Global Radio Group?
Yep.
Wow.
So there you go. It makes you feel a bit inadequate, really, doesn't it, Dave?
No. Yeah, maybe.
Right, next name for you, Deborah Nicklin, or as she's called now, Deborah Nicklin Dagan.
I remember her. She was kind of Mike Ganley's right-hand woman or something, wasn't she?
She was, yeah. She was sort of like the mother of the station.
Yeah, I always remember her being that kind of very motherly kind of figure, always kind of around and helping out and that kind of stuff.
She also presented the classical music show.
That makes sense. I never listened to that in my life.
Which always made me chuckle, because she always used to come in with her CDs all in order, and she had her entire show scripted out what she was going to say. She had all the records timed, so she knew exactly how long she had to speak for in between each record, and she had it all timed out perfectly for fitting into the adverts and stuff.
Well, see, I don't get that scripted technique, but, if it works for her, fair enough.
And our preparation for our show was grab the newspapers, a few CDs, and wing it as we went.
It was. That was about as far as it went, didn't it?
So anyway, Deborah, she is now the owner of an alpaca farm in France.
What?
Yeah.
That's random.
It's a bit random. She's been out there a few years now. But yeah, that's what she does.
That sounds like a Stroudy dream.
Yeah. Right, we've already touched upon him, but Kieran Miles.
Kieran Miles. See, I would imagine he stayed in broadcasting and news.
As far as I'm aware, and I can't remember exactly what his job is now, but he married a Canadian, moved to Canada, and he is now living in Canada, and I think he's some sort of like sales rep for a big company.
I can understand that as well. He was, he always seemed very professional.
Here's another name for you, Dave.
Go on.
Dave Cool.
Dave Cool. Now, I'm trying to remember, there were a few Daves, weren't there?
That was Little Dave.
Dave Cool was Little Dave.
And do you remember he was sort of thrust upon us by a certain other individual who shall remain nameless?
Yeah, we didn't really have a choice there, did we?
No. And I, in my infinite wisdom at the time, and you do these things when you're young, dumb, and full of you-know-what, decided to make his life as difficult as possible.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. I seem to remember, he seemed very good at endearing himself to various people. So I think he could have gone far, to be honest.
How far do you think he went?
Oh, I don't know. I think he's probably doing something pretty good.
Well, he is now the music manager for the UKRD group.
Wow, okay.
And of course, UKRD are the ones that brought the Falcon out and sort of kicked us into touch, so to speak.
See, that's the thing. I remember when you left the Falcon, you asked me if I'd like to still carry on, and you said, you could still carry on and do the show with Dave. And I actually, you know what, it wouldn't be the same if I wasn't doing it with you. So I just said, no, it's okay. Actually, maybe if you went that far, maybe I should have said yeah.
Could have been his assistant.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure actually, if it means being his assistant, I'm not sure if I'd want to go there.
I'm not sure you'd have lasted long with him and Chris around either.
No, I wouldn't, would I? That would have been a bit scary.
And do you remember we won't actually go into the details of it, but do you remember the story about what happened to that certain individual?
I do, and I do remember maybe it wasn't handled in the best way by the company.
No.
No. But, Ireland has also learned its fair share of problems with, various organisations and crimes that perhaps could be dealt with other ways. So
let's just say it's the Rolf Harris precedent, shall we? And move on.
Well, yeah.
Right, final name for you, Gary Smith.
Gary Smith?
Gary Smith, he was like, outside of my show, he was like my number one buddy at the whole show.
Gary Smith? I don't remember him.
He did the Real Alternative, which was on a Saturday night, so you probably never bumped into him, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember that name of that show, but I don't remember him at all.
Well, basically, he did the Real Alternative, which was a 2-hour show, which he got to pick, a bit like us, he got to pick the music and play whatever he wanted and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, after the Falcon, he did a bit of radio in Gloucester for the UKRD, not in Gloucester, Bristol for the UKRD group.
Oh, yeah.
He does a bit of DJing every now and again, but his main passion now is he's got his own website, which is www.cactuscounty.co.uk. And what it is he's found his inner artist, and he paints pictures under the title of the Folk Art of Cactus County, and it's kind of, the best way I can describe it is his paintings are all sort of very Day of the Dead-ish.
Yeah, very cool.
In terms of the Mexican Day of the Dead.
Mexican Day of the Dead, cool.
Yeah, so like the Book of Life.
Yeah, so there's some pretty, some pretty random people have gone. People have gone to some pretty random stuff there, haven't they?
They have, yeah, and I should just say Gary has actually got a shop where you can buy his paintings. It's an Etsy shop, Etsy. If you look for him on cacti.co.uk, there is a link there, and you can go and buy his paintings. I would recommend having a look because they are pretty awesome, to be honest.
I might have to have a look.
Take a butcher's, Dave. I am highly recommending it.
I will have a look. Tell you what, do you know who I remember? You probably haven't. Who knows where she's gone on to?
Go on.
Do you remember there was some kind of jingle at the start of your show where there was a lady who worked in the front in sales or something, saying advertising?
Melissa.
That was Melissa. And she did a little jingle, a little noise for your jingle. I just went, ooh. Taste of Stu and friends. Ooh. And just that noise she made was just so incredibly sexy. Just like, okay, you know what? She was a bit of an older lady, but that noise was just like, wow.
Do you remember the French version of that jingle?
The French version? Yeah, sort of.
Because we had the French work experience girls.
Oh, yes.
Now it is time for a taste of stew. I mean, obviously that's the worst French accent you're ever going to hear, but you get the idea.
Yeah, that was pretty awful.
Yeah, because after A Taste of Grant and Rogers, the show was A Taste of Stew, and then finally A Taste of Stew and Friends.
Yeah, it was A Taste of Stu and Friends. I think it stayed Stu and Friends, didn't it?
Yeah, and you were Lonely Dave to start with.
Yeah, I was Lonely Dave, who bizarrely got married.
Yeah, and you had a jingle and everything.
Yeah, I did have a jingle. Which, you know, I always remember that on our last show, I wish I had told you on what my favourite idea could have been, and I so wish we'd done it.
Which was what?
It would just have wound up some of our listeners. Well, I thought it would have been a great idea for you to wind me up, and then me to stand up and have a tantrum, just shout that I wasn't going to take it anymore, and that, you know, that was it, that was the end, and I'd just walk out. And that was it. Obviously, you would have carried on the show from there, but...
I think our final show there wasn't really anything special, it kind of just died out on its arse.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? But, you know, I think we're kind of a bit sad that it was the end, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But the Falcon obviously got bought out by UKRD. That became Star FM, I think it was.
Yeah, because they were a big company, weren't they? Star FM.
Yeah. That went Kaputski a few years later. That was followed by Stroud FM, which was like a volunteer-based thing, which lasted a few years in Stroud. Have you ever heard of Stroud FM?
I don't think I ever. I think I must have seen it around, but I never listened to it. And to tell the truth, I don't think I listened to any of them after it was Falcon.
And following that, the sort of it's not really local radio now because it's not got a base and it's not broadcasted live, so to speak. But you have a thing called Bus Stop Radio now.
Never heard of that.
Bus Stop Radio. I'm not sure if it's .com or .co.uk, but anyway, that is Stroud based, but it's all online radio, so it's like on demand.
Oh, I see.
And my good friends Pancast Productions, who you've probably heard of through Facebook.
I have heard of them, and I've seen a lot of their stuff on Facebook, and I have listened to little tidbits here and there. But just one of those things is having time to actually stay committed to it.
Well, they've got a show on that station called the Pancast Movie Show. So I would recommend anyone checking that out and checking out any of the other stuff they do, because those boys are awesome. But that's a different conversation. I've said it a million times now, so people don't need to listen to it again. So after the Falcon went, I disappeared off to Ibiza.
You did? You went into the wilderness for a while, didn't you?
I did, and came back from Ibiza, ended up in Birmingham. Long story short, ended up with a wife and 3 kids. And what did you do after the Falcon?
Well, after Falcon, I stayed in Blockbuster for a little while. I say a little while. I stayed in Blockbuster till it disappeared, didn't I?
Donkey's year. How many years did you work for Blockbuster Video, man?
It must have been, I don't know, far too long. Far too long. But, in the end, when Blockbuster went, when Blockbuster went, I had a wife, I had 2 kids, and for a little while, I had 3 jobs. I had my new job as a teaching assistant, which is what I do now. I had my job at Blockbuster in the evenings, and on the weekends, I also worked in an ice cream van.
You were an ice cream man?
Yeah, I still do it. I still do it. My neighbour over the road has 3 ice cream vans. So on a weekend, I get in the van, drive to a show somewhere, like a horse show, and sit there and sell ice creams.
That's actually made me chuckle, because that's the last job I would ever have imagined you doing.
Well, I wouldn't be doing it. My neighbour owns vans, and it's actually great fun. You sell ice cream to people all day, and you do get the occasional day when you're sat in the van and it's raining, and you're sat there for 8 hours in the rain. But you also get the occasional day when it's just so ridiculously hot, and you're sitting on and you're scooping ice cream for 10 hours, and you go home with a sore wrist because you've been scooping all day. That sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? Sore wrist, yeah, but yeah, it's good fun.
And of course, you get to see lots of scantily clad ladies.
I can possibly comment.
So that was our look back. I was going to say brief look back at the Falcon, but we've been talking for nearly 50 minutes. Give the odd break here or there. So now, as a sort of tribute to what we used to do on the Falcon, because we had various features and all the rest of it, we're going to do a review in a minute. But first of all, we've got a top 10. So what I did, in the interest of fairness, it's the top 10 80s movies.
Hey, you said top 5.
I don't know, because you've got 5.
Okay.
And I've got 5. To make it fair, right? And what I did was I put all 10 on little bits of paper, and I drew them out at random. So the order is then fair, because it's not just, your 5 are the bottom 5 and my 5 are the top 5. Okay?
Right, that's fair.
But things like this are obviously subjective, and people are going to listen to the list of the 10 films that we are saying are the best from the 80s, and they're going to say, well, that's rubbish because you've missed out such and such. So just quick honourable mentions to 10 other films which didn't make the list. The Terminator.
Yeah, that's the thing. I love Terminator, but a lot of people see it now as being like the holy grail. It's like, it's not perfect. It was a cheap-ass movie. It just so happened to go on to make some other better stuff.
Okay. Blade Runner.
Definitely. Sweet movie.
Airplane.
Oh, yes. Still the best.
Well, it's not really, is it? Because it's not in our top 10.
But it's like, as far as comedies go, yeah, people have tried to make loads of these days, like all the scary movie ones. Scary Movie 1 to 22, whatever they're on now. All the kind of lampoonery films that they try to make, and Airplane is still the best.
Okay. Aliens.
That has aged very well.
Right. The Fly.
You know what, I still remember from that film.
What?
Every time I watch it.
Go on.
You know, there's a scene where, he's starting to morph into the Fly, and bits are falling off him, yeah? I'm sure there's a scene where part of his ear drops off, yeah?
Yeah.
And he takes it off, and he opens up a cupboard, or a cabinet, and he puts it in there. And just for a half second, you can see what else is in the cabinet. And I'm sure, as he opens it up, you can see his gentleman parts.
His manhood.
Yeah, I'm sure you can see it in there, but it's such a brief second where he opens it up and puts it back in. I'm just left thinking, is that his junk's worn off?
I'm going to have to YouTube that now and try and find that.
That would be cool, find out and check.
The Shining.
I'm surprised that's not in your top 10.
It's not in my top 5, no, sorry.
It's because that's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah. The Thing.
Ooh, controversial, which one? So, yeah, that would have been John Carpenter one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, what did you think of the newish one, by the way?
I refuse to watch it.
Good call.
I hate reboots and remakes.
Yeah, I've watched it, and you want to save yourself that pain.
Okay. Rain Man.
I'm surprised you went for that.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't pick it in your top 5, to be honest.
No, I'm not a fan of Cruise.
Alright, fair enough. And finally, honourable mention, Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
That's got to be in there, hasn't it? That's got to be, just outside the top. I never liked it that much when I was a kid.
Fair enough. I love Roger Rabbit, but so now here we go. This is the top 10 movies of the 80s as chosen by my good self and my good buddy here, Dave, and off we go.
something curious about this broadcast.
In at number 10, we have Weird Science. Now, this is one of mine, and the reason why I picked it is because of Kelly LeBrock.
Oh, yes. See, I could have just as well picked that as well.
Enough said. But, you know, there's not really anything else you can say about that film. It's just Kelly LeBrock makes that film, and I was a young lad at the time, very impressionable.
See, that's it. You know, as kind of, you know, fairly quiet, shy guy myself as well, and a little bit nerdy sometimes, that could be said. You know, the idea of two mates getting together and making the perfect woman on a computer, I have to say, it's kind of an attractive idea.
In at number 9, we have the first one of your choices, 84C Mopic.
84 Charlie Mopic, yeah. Now, have you ever heard of that?
I'd never heard of it until you gave it me for the list.
Ah, well, see, being a perfect 80s movie, it was actually really ahead of its time. It was all shot. It's about a reporter in the Vietnam War who is nowadays we'd say embedded with a platoon on like a reconnaissance mission in Vietnam. Now, for the whole film, he's just like he's interviewing the guys in the platoon. For the whole film, you see it from his perspective through his camera, and it's not an expensive film by any means. And in fact, years later, when I saw a documentary about it on BBC Two, I found out it was actually all shot in one guy's back garden in California, which, you know, technically I suppose doesn't look anything like Vietnam. But nowadays we get so many of these films that are shot on handheld cameras, or actually nowadays like Cloverfield, they're shot on really expensive cameras and then they're just made to look like they're been shot on phones or something. But, you know, it's actually a really quality film. And okay, the acting's not the best, and the special effects, there's no special effects. You know, just try and find it, have a watch of it, because I remember seeing it a number of times on BBC Two at like 11 o'clock at night, and it's a different kind of war film.
Okay.
Just the last couple of minutes, kind of heartbreaking.
Okay, number 8, The Empire Strikes Back.
See, how can you not have The Empire Strikes Back?
Well, I'm not a big Star Wars fan, Dave, so...
Yeah, but, you know, okay, you could have the first Star Wars, but technically that's a 70s movie. But how many times has someone copied back now that I am your father? You know, every time I watch that movie still and see that little bit, you know, I have to say props up to Simon Pegg still as well, who still, also, along with me, anytime he watches it, he still goes, no! You know, still sends a shiver down my spine that bit. You know, Darth Vader is his father. What the hell?
Okay, number 7, Back to the Future. I picked this basically because it is the most perfect time travel movie ever made.
It is, actually.
At number 6, we have Gremlins, which is another one of my choices. Again, this is just the perfect 80s film, and the fact that they're talking about doing a remake fills me full of dread. At number 5,
See, Gremlins, I'm sure I could have chosen that one, because that is still one of my favourite movies of all time as well. And I was still just slightly shocked here for a moment that you just said they're going to make a remake.
Oh yeah, they're making a remake.
I hadn't heard that yet. I'm still kind of... My heart has just sunk about 10 levels.
Plus, I've met Billy, so...
You met Billy?
Yeah, Zach Galligan.
Wicked. See, do you know what I know I always said it to you, yeah? There's been a lot of verses, they need to take a different direction with Gremlins, yeah? They've had Freddy versus Jason, all that kind of stuff. Aliens vs Predator, they need to have Gremlins versus the Muppets.
That is not going to work.
No, it would work. You know, you can have Gizmo switch sides to the Gremlins, Gizmo switch side to the Muppets, and, you know, Kermit be best friends with Gizmo, and, you know, who knows, maybe even the Gremlins could recruit Gonzo or something like that to their side. It could work, man.
Right, well, we'll wait and see on that one. Number 5 is Beetlejuice, which is another one of my choices. It's probably, outside of Birdman, now, my favourite ever Michael Keaton performance?
See, I still haven't seen Birdman. I have to.
You really do. It's awesome.
Yeah, Michael Keaton. Yeah, he is quality for actually. And you know what? I want to see him play Batman again.
In like The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, anything like that. He's like, I want to see Michael Keaton put on that cowl again.
Anything's better than Batfleck.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there.
At number 4, we have another one of your choices. It's Ghostbusters.
Yeah, again, see, that movie has not aged. You can still watch that movie. You can still release that movie at the cinema today, and it would still get people watching it, and it would still look damn good.
So thoughts on the remake?
Why?
I'm not going to go any further. That's all you need to say.
I'm not totally against remakes. You know, I understand it when someone says, "Oh, I know what, this movie's done really well in Hong Kong or China, and you know, let's make an American remake so people will watch, so the mass audience will watch it, or something like that." Or maybe a movie was made 30 years ago and it's dated a little bit. We need to freshen it up a bit. But why? No, Ghostbusters is not necessary. And you know, an all-girl cast. You know, you can have as many girls as you want in it, but they're still not going to add up to one Bill Murray.
At number 3 is another one of your choices. It's Batman.
Yeah, well, how can you not have Batman? I mean, this was one of the first big modern superhero movies of modern times, wasn't it?
Well, it's the biggest one after Superman 2, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, there was original Superman 1 and 2, but with Batman, with Tim Burton taking on Batman, do you think we would have had all the stuff we've got now? Would we have had X-Men, or would we have had the Avengers, or, well, you know, possibly it's not a good thing that we would have had Man of Steel, but, you know, I just don't think we would have had most of the great superhero films without Tim Burton and his vision of Batman.
At number 2, we have the greatest musical of all time. It's the Blues Brothers.
You and I can stop being friends on this. Because I've said it before, I'm just not a fan, I don't get it. But maybe that's just me, maybe I've got something major missing in my sense of humour.
Everything about that film is just epic. The set pieces, the music, and it has got John, the man is a god, Belushi in it.
Yeah, see, I was always more a Dan Aykroyd man.
Yeah, but Dan Aykroyd's kind of ruined his entire career.
Yeah, I take your point there. He's kind of, you know, he needs to start thinking about what movies he's doing.
Yeah. And finally, at number 1, it's one of yours, Dave, just to prove that I was being fair with my choice, the way I picked it. It's RoboCop.
RoboCop, yeah, see, I still love that movie. And, you know, okay, my memories have been tainted a little bit by the remake, but you watch RoboCop now, and the whole of our future society is in that film. You've got, you know, you look over to Iraq now, look over to all the wars we've had where we've had private contractors, we've got our government trying to privatise everything. It's only a matter of time before our police and everything in our country is worked by OCD.
We will watch this space, and that concludes our top 10 of 80s movies. Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to hit me up with any comments regarding your theories on the utter nonsense or genius that we have just spouted.
See, what do you think? If you think fast forward 10, 15 years, are we going to be looking back at movies in 20 years and saying, you know, what would you call the years now, the teens, the 2010s, or
yeah,
and saying, look at all those great classic movies, because I don't know.
I think you're right. I completely agree.
I think the 80s must have been a golden time.
So although it was the decade that music forgot, but moving swiftly on from that, because that's a whole different debate, we are going to close up this show with one other sort of tip of the hat to what we used to do on the Falcon, and that is the review. But for the first time ever, you're not going to review a film, you're not going to review a book, you are going to review
a comic.
And which comic is it?
It is Batman number 40.
And what is so special about this particular comic?
Well, I'm going to give you a huge spoiler, okay?
Spoiler alert here. If you haven't read it, do not listen on.
You know, I'm going to give you a spoiler because, you know, let's be honest, most people don't read the comics. Everyone's going to go see the Batman versus Superman film and all that kind of stuff. But I bought this comic because I'm a huge fan of the art of Greg Capullo. Alright? And I know you've read some of this stuff as well. Because I saw you wearing a Joker mask. That came with his graphic novel. Yeah. But I was a huge fan of his when he used to work on the X-Men. And obviously I'm more of a Marvel man than DC, both being perfectly good comic book companies. But in this comic is wrap-up of quite a huge story.
It's called Endgame, isn't it?
It is called Endgame. And during which, basically, the Joker has come back and he's decided that really, actually, he's had enough. And towards the end of the comic, you've got all those characters in there. You've got Bane, you've got Mr. Freeze, you've got you've got lots of different Robins in there. So obviously, there's Robin. I'm sure Damian Wayne is in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And Dick Grayson, the original Batman, who's what does he call now? Nightwing?
Yeah.
But towards the end of this comic, there is an epic fight between Bruce Wayne himself and Batman and Joker. And I have to say, the art in this is gorgeous. You know, Greg Capullo's Joker is just, wow. He just makes him look incredible. And the last couple of pages where at the end I'm just like, oh, so Bruce Wayne is dead.
Again.
Yeah, again. Obviously, but you know, it's not even done in a kind of epic storytelling way. It's just look, Batman and Joker have fought and punched and kicked and stabbed each other until they just have to lie down next to each other and just go, ugh. Which is kind of understated. I like the way it's understated, that they would just fight until they die.
And from what I've read, going forward, Jim Gordon is going to be the new Batman?
Yes, Jim Gordon is the new Batman in a really quite cool Robo-Bat suit. I guess that's what you call it, Robo-Bat. And the idea of having Jim Gordon, Commissioner Gordon himself as Batman, is actually really quite a cool idea, I think.
So we'll wait and see how long they run with that before they bring Bruce Wayne back.
Yeah, I'm giving it all 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, obviously not many fans outside the comic book readers will actually know that, you know, Bruce Wayne has died and it never lasts.
So what would you give it out of 10?
This comic, I'd give a good 10 out of 10.
There you go. So check it out. If it's issue 40, obviously don't go and buy issue 40 straight away. I think it's done over 6 issues.
It is done over 6 issues, but in all honesty, you can buy this comic and enjoy it for its cool. You know, it's just gorgeous art. But I would recommend just wait a month or two and buy the trade paperback of the whole story, the whole Endgame story, and then you can enjoy the whole thing from the beginning.
So thanks for your review there, Dave. So all of that brings us back to the end of the show. So it's the end of another episode of World of Stu. But before we go, Dave, one final thing is we're going to close the show with the theme tune to wrestler that died yesterday.
Oh yes, of course.
And that is the one and the only American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Of course.
So, do you have a memory of the first time you saw Dusty?
You know what? I think the first time I saw Dusty, I was never a fan. So I think, like you, I remember, you know, my earliest memories of him were in that polka dot American Dream suit. But if I think back, actually, his fights in the mid card with Macho Man that I remember at the time were actually still really great matches. And you know, it's just a shame that I think it's a shame that his time with WWE or WWF as it was there then, I don't think they used him as much as they should have.
No, he was a great wrestler who had some awesome feuds with Ric Flair back in the 70s. Like you said, in the 80s/early 90s, he was completely misused by the WWE. And he was the American Dream. But it is that theme tune we're going to close the show with. So it just leaves me to thank you once again for coming on the show and reminiscing with me.
You are welcome. Always fun to talk.
And next time I'm in the Shire, I will make a conscious effort to get over to Gloucester and have a proper catch-up.
Yeah, make sure you do. Bring the kids over. We can have a geek fest together.
Yeah. So thank you very much to Dave, and thank you very much to everyone who's listened to this particular episode of World of Stu. If you want to find out more about World of Stu, you can check me out on silentmovieman.wix.com/World of Stu or the Facebook page World of Stu. After you've listened to this, feel free to hit me up with any comments and let me know what you think. And I hope to catch you all on the next episode of World of Stu.
Amen.